What if the ache in your chest isn't emptiness calling for someone to fill it, but fullness preparing to overflow? You sit in rooms where others gather, yet feel like you're watching life through glass. Every connection feels shallow. Every conversation leaves you more isolated than before. But what Jung understood about human psychology reveals something profound about your current state. This isn't loneliness as absence. This is preparation as presence. The modern world has convinced you that solitude equals suffering, that being alone means being broken. Yet something deeper is happening in the quiet corners of your existence. Your psyche is orchestrating a sacred pause, creating space for transformation that only happens when the noise of others finally fades. You're not being punished by fate. You're being prepared by wisdom. There's a mysterious intelligence at work in your isolation, one that recognizes what your conscious mind cannot yet see, like a master gardener who knows when soil needs rest between seasons. Your soul has called for this fallow period. The relationships that once consumed your energy have fallen away, not as punishment, but as protection. Your inner world is preparing ground for something entirely new to grow, and this journey into apparent isolation holds keys to a love more authentic than anything you've known before. Not the desperate grasping that masquerades as connection, but the magnetic pull between two souls who have learned to be whole on their own. Stay with me as we explore why your solitude might be the most important work you've ever done, and how it's setting the stage for a connection that will transform everything you thought you knew about love. The loneliness you feel isn't the absence of someone. It's the presence of everything you've been avoiding about yourself. When you stop running toward others to escape the silence, something remarkable begins to emerge from the depths. Your psyche starts speaking in a language you've forgotten how to hear. Dreams become more vivid. Synchronicities appear like breadcrumbs leading you deeper into your own mystery. Jung called this the necessary withdrawal, not the withdrawal of depression or defeat, but the strategic retreat of a soul preparing for its next evolution. Think of seeds buried in winter soil. They're not dead. They're gathering power in the darkness, preparing for a spring that requires this exact kind of patient waiting. Your nervous system is recalibrating. All those years of adjusting yourself to fit into relationships that never quite worked have left you energetically scattered. The people you attracted reflected your internal fragmentation back to you. Now, in this seeming emptiness, your authentic frequency is finally being restored. You're remembering who you are when you're not trying to be what someone else needs. But here's where most people make their crucial mistake. They interpret this natural process as something wrong with them. They rush back into connections before the work is complete, before the new frequency has had time to stabilize. They mistake the cocoon for the cage, not understanding that something unprecedented is taking shape in the darkness. The complex of incompleteness runs deeper than most realize. Somewhere in your early years, you learned that love meant filling a void in someone else, or having them fill yours. You absorbed the belief that wholeness was a two-person job. This created what Jung recognized as a split in the psyche, where parts of yourself were projected onto others and then desperately sought in relationship after relationship. You began attracting people who mirrored your own unhealed wounds. Not because you were broken, but because your unconscious was trying to complete an interrupted process. Every failed connection was actually your psyche's attempt to reunite with disowned aspects of yourself. The needy partners reflected your own unacknowledged neediness. The emotionally unavailable ones mirrored your own fear of true intimacy. This pattern creates what feels like a curse. You find yourself repeatedly drawn to people who can't give you what you're seeking, because unconsciously you're not seeking it from them at all. You're seeking reunion with parts of yourself that you learned to hide or deny long ago. The relationship becomes a stage where these internal conflicts play out over and over, until you finally recognize the pattern. Perhaps you notice how your body responds differently now when you encounter potential partners. Where once there was immediate attraction to familiar dysfunction, now there's a subtle knowing that guides you away from old patterns. Your intuition has become more refined, more discerning, and it's as if you've developed new sensory organs that can detect the difference between chemistry based on wounding and magnetism rooted in wholeness. Breaking free from this cycle requires something that feels counterintuitive. You must stop looking for completion in another and start excavating the wholeness that already exists within you. This is where the real work begins and why your current solitude isn't punishment but preparation. You're finally in the right laboratory for the experiment your soul has been waiting to conduct. The descent into your inner world can feel like entering a territory that's both familiar and foreign. Jung understood that we all carry within us aspects of our personality that we've relegated to the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've deemed unacceptable or unsafe to express. During periods of enforced solitude, these shadow aspects emerge from their hiding places, demanding acknowledgement and integration. You might find yourself feeling emotions you've spent years suppressing. Anger you've never allowed yourself to express. Grief you've never fully processed. Parts of your personality that you've kept locked away because they didn't fit the image of who you thought you needed to be. This isn't regression. This is revolution. Your psyche is calling back all the parts of yourself that you scattered in order to be loved by others. The process can feel like death because in a very real sense it is. The version of yourself that could only exist in relationship to others is dissolving. The identity built on pleasing, adapting, and performing is being composted into something more authentic. You're learning to inhabit your own emotional landscape without immediately reaching for someone else to interpret it for you. This is why the solitude feels so intense. You're not just alone with yourself. You're alone with all the selves you've ever been, all the voices you've silenced, all the desires you've denied. It's overwhelming until you realize this isn't chaos. It's homecoming. Every difficult emotion that surfaces is a part of you that's been waiting patiently for your attention, your acceptance, your love. What emerges from this confrontation with yourself is something unprecedented in your experience. A capacity to be with your own complexity without needing to fix it, change it, or have someone else validate it. You begin to develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposing aspects of yourself in conscious tension without forcing a resolution. The ancient alchemists understood something profound about human transformation. They knew that the marriage of opposites, the sacred union they called the hieros gamos, had to first happen within the individual before it could manifest in the external world. Jung recognized this wisdom in his exploration of what he termed the anima and animus, the contrasexual aspects of the psyche that seek integration within each person. For those who identify as feminine, this means developing a conscious relationship with your inner masculine, the part of you that acts, decides, and creates structure in the world. For those who identify as masculine or feminine, it means embracing your inner feminine, the receptive, intuitive, feeling aspect of your nature. This isn't about gender roles or stereotypes. It's about psychological wholeness. Most people project these internal aspects onto external partners, seeking in relationship what they're actually called to develop within themselves. You look for someone strong to feel safe instead of developing your own inner strength. You seek someone sensitive to feel understood instead of cultivating your own emotional intelligence. The relationship becomes a stage for these projections, often leading to disappointment when the other person fails to fulfill functions that were never really theirs to perform. But during this time of solitude, something different becomes possible. Without the distraction of trying to find these qualities in someone else, you begin to discover them within yourself. You learn to access your own inner strength when you feel vulnerable. You develop your own capacity for emotional attunement. You become both protector and nurturer to yourself, This internal marriage doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, attention, and a willingness to sit with aspects of yourself that might feel unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Your inner masculine might emerge as a voice that sets boundaries you've never been able to set before. Your inner feminine might manifest as an intuitive knowing that guides you away from situations that once would have trapped you. The result is a kind of psychological alchemy. Instead of feeling like half a person seeking your other half, you begin to experience yourself as a complete being capable of conscious choice in relationship. You're no longer driven by unconscious needs to find someone who will make you feel whole. You're free to choose connection from a place of overflow rather than emptiness. As this inner integration deepens, something remarkable begins to shift in your energetic field. People start responding to you differently, even though you can't quite put your finger on what's changed. There's a quality of presence about you that wasn't there before. A sense of centeredness that feels both mysterious and magnetic. You're no longer broadcasting the frequency of incompleteness that once attracted people who were trying to fix you or needed you to fix them. This shift in your energetic presence is subtle but profound. Jung observed that individuals who have done the work of integrating their shadow and unifying their internal opposites develop what he called an authentic personality. They're no longer performing a role or trying to be what others need them to be. They're simply present as themselves, and this authenticity creates a natural magnetism that draws others who are also committed to their own growth. You begin to notice that the people who enter your life during this phase are qualitatively different from those you attracted before. They're not seeking someone to complete them or heal their wounds. They're not trying to rescue you or be rescued by you. Instead, there's a quality of recognition, as if you're meeting fellow travelers who have also done their own inner work. The conversations become different too. Instead of the surface-level exchanges that once left you feeling empty, you find yourself in discussions that nourish your soul. People share their authentic struggles and insights with you because they sense you can hold space for their complexity without trying to fix or change them. You've learned to do this for yourself, and now you naturally offer this gift to others. Something shifts in the quality of silence you carry. It's no longer the heavy silence of suppressed pain, but the luminous silence of integrated wisdom. You've learned to listen to the spaces between words, to hear what isn't being said. This develops naturally when you've spent time truly listening to yourself, when you've learned to interpret the subtle languages of your own soul. Others are drawn to this quality of deep listening like flowers, turned toward sunlight. But perhaps the most significant shift is in your relationship to timing. You're no longer desperate for connection to arrive on your schedule. You've learned to trust the organic unfolding of relationships, to let them develop at their own pace without forcing or manipulating outcomes. This patience comes from a deep knowing that you're complete as you are, and anything that comes into your life is a bonus rather than a necessity. The loneliness that once felt like a prison has transformed into a sanctuary. Solitude becomes something you cherish rather than endure. You've discovered the profound difference between being alone and being lonely. Alone is a physical state. Lonely is an emotional state that comes from disconnection from yourself. Now that you've established this inner connection, being alone becomes a source of renewal rather than deprivation. Your relationship patterns begin to shift in ways that might surprise you. Instead of attracting people who trigger your unhealed wounds, you find yourself drawn to those who inspire your continued growth. Instead of relationships built on mutual neediness, you discover the possibility of partnerships rooted in mutual appreciation and respect. The drama that once seemed essential to romantic connection reveals itself as simply the collision of two unhealed psyches. This doesn't mean your relationships become perfect or conflict-free, But the conflicts that arise are different in quality. They're opportunities for deeper understanding rather than replications of old trauma patterns. You find yourself able to stay present during difficult conversations instead of defaulting to old defensive strategies. You can hear criticism without immediately interpreting it as rejection. You can express your own needs without the terror of abandonment that once kept you silent. The transformation extends beyond romantic relationships into every area of your life. Friendships become more authentic as you stop performing versions of yourself designed to be liked. Professional relationships improve as you begin setting boundaries that honor your energy and time. Family dynamics shift as you stop playing roles that were assigned to you long ago but no longer serve your highest good. What you're discovering is that the work you've been doing in solitude has applications far beyond preparing for romantic love. You've been developing the capacity for conscious relationship in all its forms. You've learned to show up as yourself rather than as what you think others need you to be. This authenticity becomes the foundation for all your future connections. The ancient patterns that once governed your life begin to lose their power. The need to please others at the expense of your own well-being starts to fade. The compulsion to fix or rescue others transforms into a healthy ability to offer support without losing yourself in the process. The fear of being alone dissolves as you recognize that you've built a rich inner life that sustains you regardless of external circumstances. This is where Jung's concept of individuation reaches its flowering. You've become an individual in the truest sense, not isolated from others but connected to them from a place of wholeness rather than woundedness. You're no longer seeking your identity through relationship but bringing your full self to relationship. The difference is everything. There's a profound recognition that emerges during this process. You are not becoming someone new but remembering who you always were beneath the layers of conditioning and compromise. The person emerging from this cocoon of solitude feels both entirely familiar and completely unprecedented. You're accessing aspects of your nature that were dormant during the years spent trying to fit into relationships that required you to be smaller than your truth. The journey isn't linear, and there will still be moments when old patterns surface or familiar fears arise, but now you have tools for working with these experiences that you didn't possess before. You know how to sit with difficult emotions without immediately reaching for someone else to soothe them. You can recognize projection when it happens and own your part in relationship dynamics without taking responsibility for things that aren't yours to carry. Most importantly, you've developed what Jung called the religious attitude toward life, a sense that your existence has meaning and purpose, that extends beyond your personal happiness or success. You understand that your individual healing contributes to the collective healing of humanity, that your journey toward wholeness creates ripples that extend far beyond your immediate circle. This perspective transforms your approach to relationship from taking to giving. Instead of asking what others can do for you, you find yourself naturally considering what you can contribute. Instead of seeking to be understood, you focus on understanding. Instead of demanding to be loved, you look for ways to express love. This shift is magnetic in ways that neediness never could be. The person you're becoming through this process of conscious solitude is someone you've never been before. Not a perfected version of your old self, but an entirely new expression of your deepest nature. You're accessing capacities that were always within you, but remained dormant while you were focused on finding completion through others. Your creativity expands, your intuition sharpens, your capacity for joy deepens even in the absence of external validation. You begin to understand that the love you were seeking all along was never really about finding the right person. It was about becoming the right person, the authentic expression of who you came here to be. This doesn't mean you no longer desire partnership, but your desire is now rooted in abundance rather than scarcity, in choice rather than compulsion. The person who emerges from this cocoon of conscious solitude is magnetic in ways that desperation never could achieve. There's a quality of self-possession about you that draws others without effort or manipulation. You're no longer trying to convince anyone to love you because you've learned to love yourself so completely that others are naturally inspired to join that celebration. When connection does arrive, it comes not as salvation from your solitude, but as a natural extension of the wholeness you've cultivated within yourself. You recognize it not by the familiar intensity of unhealed wounds triggering each other, but by the sense of coming home to yourself even more deeply in the presence of another. This is love as recognition rather than rescue, partnership as enhancement rather than completion. The waiting transforms from suffering into preparation. Every day spent in apparent solitude is actually a day spent in the most important relationship of your life, the one with your own soul. You're learning its language, its rhythms, its needs and desires. You're becoming fluent in the art of self-love, which turns out to be the prerequisite for every other kind of love worth having. This is what Jung understood about the human journey toward wholeness. We must first learn to love ourselves completely before we can love another freely, and we must first become whole within ourselves before we can choose partnership from a place of strength rather than weakness. We must first develop our own inner marriage before we can create conscious union with another. Your current state of aloneness isn't a waiting room, it's a workshop. It's not empty space to be filled, but sacred space to be honored. You're not broken and in need of fixing, but whole and in the process of remembering. The love that awaits you on the other side of this journey will be unlike anything you've known before, precisely because you will be unlike anyone you've been before. The timing of love, you're discovering, has its own intelligence. Just as flowers bloom when conditions are right, not when we demand it, conscious partnership emerges when two souls have reached the point where they can enhance each other's wholeness rather than complete each other's brokenness. Your solitude is creating those conditions within you, preparing soil that can support a love rooted in freedom rather than need. So trust the process, even when it feels endless. Trust the emptiness, especially when it feels unbearable. Trust your soul's wisdom in orchestrating this period of apparent separation from others so you can discover your profound connection to yourself. The love you're preparing for will be worth every moment of this sacred solitude because it will be built on the foundation of two people who learned to be whole on their own and chose to share that wholeness with each other. Every day you spend in conscious relationship with yourself is a day spent in preparation for the most authentic love of your life. Not because you're earning it or proving you deserve it, but because you're becoming someone capable of recognizing it when it arrives and receiving it without losing yourself in the process. If this exploration of solitude as preparation resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe and share your own insights in the comments. How has your experience of being alone shifted your understanding of what you're truly seeking in connection? Your journey toward wholeness might be exactly what another soul needs to hear, to trust their own process of becoming. Together, we're all preparing for deeper love, one conscious moment of solitude at a time.